Have you ever wanted to discover what's missing in your life? Metaphysics is available to all and is part of your life even if you don't know it. Welcome to Metaphysics, a view through the veil with Barb Crowley. Together we'll explore the mysteries behind metaphysics and how to use it to have a deeper understanding and advantage in life. And now here's your host, Barb Crowley.
Hi, this is Barb Crowley, and welcome to Metaphysics, a view through the veil. Today we're talking to Mark Beal, and Mark is a hypnotherapist specializing in past life, between life regression, and spirit releasement. He's given over 5,000 regression sessions as a practitioner since 2006. He's also a teacher with tens of thousands of students. For his video courses, and mentors and certifies advanced students in spiritual regression therapies through his Past Life Awakening Institute. Mark, thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate you coming on, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thanks a lot for having me. Great.
Thanks. How did you become a hypnotherapist and get into regression, past life regression?
Yeah, well, it's a journey. And so I think one awakens to it. And I sort of took it step by step. I wasn't particularly spiritually interested as a kid, so I thought, and had a fairly conventional upbringing until I was 25. But then at age 25, I went through a series of awakening experiences, you have to call it. And it took me about 8 years to integrate that and for that to then become a full-time therapist. And so I'm 52 now. I was 25 when it started. It's been 27 years that I've been what I am in a way.
Yeah.
And the first 8 years of figuring out what it is that I'm going to be. And the start of it all was for me meditation. So I went to a meditation retreat with an intellectual curiosity about the mind, the subconscious, but and Buddhism kind of almost as a philosophy. And I sort of read it as that, quite in my head.
Yeah.
But then when I sat and meditated, I instantly felt very comfortable with it. Like, this is familiar. Where's this been all my life or lives? And the first thing that happened was I thought I'm a conventional guy. I've got this finite identity. I had an economics degree. I was working in financial markets in London and Hong Kong. And, I'm
That's
a
a
sort of
stretch, yeah.
Yeah, it's not what you'd think would be a great start for this kind of work.
Yeah.
But then I sat down in meditation, and I was supposed to be meditating, but I got it wrong because instead of being in a meditative state, I went into a hypnotic state.
Mm-hmm.
And in that hypnotic state, I was like, they say focus on your breath, follow your breath, don't let your mind wander. So
Yeah.
I got that wrong. My mind wandered, and suddenly I'm 10 years old. I'm in New Zealand, my home country. I'm by a lake. I'm reading a book. I can see the book quite clearly, and I remember, oh, this is a hypnosis book. Interesting. And then it had a bit, and I wasn't just reading it intellectually. It said, here's how you do hypnosis. So I sort of remember doing self-hypnosis, and I remember like a day or two later, I'm like, oh, this is an interesting book. I saw on the back of it, it had a script, how to do hypnosis to other people. So I said, mother, sister, lie down, follow your breath, close your eyes. And I hypnotized my mother and sister. And then someone rang the bell, and I was like, whoops, I did my meditation wrong. But I was like, what was that memory? I don't remember that. Am I just making it up?
Yeah.
So it's that classic thing. You think you're making it up. And if you have the same thing about past. So when I sat, I felt very comfortable in meditation. I thought, gosh, maybe I was a monk in a past life, but maybe I'm making it up. Now I've got this thing, well, maybe I was a hypnotist when I was a kid at 10. Maybe I'm making it up. So I literally rang up my mother. I said, oh, Mom, did I hypnotize you when I was 10 years old? She says, yeah, we're by the lake and you laid us down. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, because if she hadn't confirmed that, I would have been doubting. But so I thought I'm a conventional 25-year-old who works in finance. But then I realized, hang on, there's an inherent part of me that does have a bit of a healer, spiritual kind of aspect. And so I tell that story as well. It's my story, but I think a lot of people on the healer's path have a healing core to them, but we
Yeah.
forget about it. We've got inherent abilities. Maybe they come up and we just don't cultivate them. Maybe they come up and they get squashed down. But that was sort of the start of me investigating, thinking that, well, I could just be in India for 6 weeks and then go back and get on with my job and my life,
Hmm.
or I can pursue the meditative path and eventually end up becoming a healer, which is quite a different journey.
Did you ever look at, did you have a past life as a healer doing this?
Yeah, yeah. So that
Yeah.
was really a very early phase, and that basically kind of got me hooked on meditation straight away.
Hmm.
And so from there, I did sort of go back to my job, but as the fates would have it, they said, "Oh, the job is moving from this city to another city. If you
Hmm.
want to move, you're gonna have to go to another city.
Right.
Otherwise, take a payoff and go and do something else." So I thought, I've arrived back in my country, but my head and my soul is still in India.
Hmm.
So I just went back to India, and
Wow.
instead of being there for 6 weeks, I was there for a year,
Yeah.
and then I'd go to somewhere else and make some money, and then come back. So I was going back and forth. Basically, my whole 20s were 5 years on, 5 years off,
Hmm.
in a suit or in an ashram or in the Himalayas or something.
Right.
So throughout that process, definitely I would remember uh, specific past lives, but they came up at certain times.
Hmm.
So a past life, particularly, and it became more relevant sort of maybe 6 or 7 years after my first experience. So and that was where I got to the point where I wanted to explore hypnosis, and I was considering, does these experiences of meditation mean I should, reconnect with the past life as a monk and be a monk again?
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
and I kind of thought about that quite strongly, but I'd also be in going to places like Rishikesh and studying yoga
Yeah.
and Advedanta and non-duality. I wasn't actually doing that much asana. It was still, meditative yoga. And so then I was split, like, and I remember past lives as that as well.
Hmm.
So I'm like, am I Buddhist or am I a Hindu? I was, but what am I now? I can't remember. How do I take it forward? And
Yeah.
then I had another recall where I remembered being a healer in a past life in India, but as an English person, as part of the Raj, and that helped me reconnect again with a healing ability and quality. But yeah, so I had a number of them, and for past lives as well, the relevance tends to be whatever moment that you're in, you're gonna, because we've got so many past lives we could recall.
Right. Right.
So why does that past life come up in the moment?
Hmm.
And what's it trying to tell us now? So this was years later that I was trying to decide between, yoga or Buddhist path, and then I was stuck in a duality and a dilemma.
Yeah.
And then the way out of that was I remembered, oh, there is another path. And actually, particularly, and there's a link because I was trying to like decide between those two, and I was still getting a little bit, one versus the other. And then I was doing a meditation or a regression, and I sort of got to the end of that, but then the regression kept going. And then out of nowhere, I started remembering a time of being 23 years old. So I'm
Mm.
just a 23, and just as a tourist in this life, and I happened to
Yeah.
be in Egypt. And again, I was just traveling around, going to Africa and Asia and the Middle East, just as a tourist to like see the world. And isn't it great to be free?
Hmm.
And not really interested in spirituality, but it's just a landmark and a world cultural interesting place to go to.
Yeah.
And as I went into the pyramid, they said there's a main pathway we can go up inside it. But
Hmm.
at this time, there was like a locked door and gate, and a Egyptian guard said to me, "Yeah, baksheesh, pay me bribe, go down here." So I was like, "Okay."
Yeah.
Like, all right. So I went down, and I was on my own, away from the crowds. Went down the sort of forbidden place, sort of thinking, I'm gonna get mugged by his cousin.
Yeah.
But but also thinking, oh, this is quite cool, and just sort of went down and just goes down and down, and it went through these little passageways, and it opened up to something at the bottom, and I'm just sitting there, and Cairo is just so noisy, and
Mm-hmm.
the whole climbing up had just been pushing past tons of people, but suddenly I was just in this deep silence. And and this is something at 23 I wouldn't think of, but I just felt a really powerful energy,
Mm-hmm.
like a spiritual energy. And I was not the kind of guy who would say that, but I
Yeah.
felt something. I didn't know, couldn't process it. I didn't have the language for it. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have any of the background, but I felt something there. And for
Right.
the days afterwards, I felt a psychic, what I can only describe as a psychic connection with my friends
Mm-hmm.
that freaked them about out a little bit. But I was sort of pretty much, I don't really that interested in psychic stuff, and it's kind of funny and who cares and where's the party kind of
Mm-hmm.
a
Yeah.
approach to it.
Yep.
Not, oh, this is so spiritual. And so I'd literally discounted it and forgot about it. But then years later, when I was 32, I was remembering, hey, I was a kid being 23,
Mm-hmm.
and I had that experience that I now see as an awakening experience. And I reconnected with the energy of it that I couldn't feel at the time as
Yeah.
a 23-year-old, but as a 32-year-old, I could feel it,
Mm-hmm.
even though I wasn't there.
And you could bring it
And
back up. You could bring that energy
yeah,
back up. Yeah.
and I realized it was there before. I just wasn't sensitive enough or interested enough to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but that was then a bridge. And so, like I was doing a regression again to this life,
Mm-hmm.
but once that energy came up, then I went back into a past life. And so, or an ancient time. Again, a lot less crowded.
Yeah.
I was in a very dark space. There's a lot of energy around, just a number, 1600 BC came up.
Hmm.
And so an early time, and I felt that it was some sort of priestly uh, being,
Mm-hmm.
like or just just a healer, a priest, somebody doing some sort of ritual. And I had an
Yeah.
image of somebody sort of lying down, and it could have been in a pyramid or a sleep temple or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and that I was whispering to them. They were whispering to me. I was guiding them through like what we could probably call a between lives time, a spiritual dimension, and
Mm-hmm.
even taking them back to their past lives.
Hmm.
So I was in a past life regression, remembering a past life where I
Yeah.
was doing past life therapy.
That's pretty funny.
And yeah,
Yeah.
and I thought, well, maybe I don't have to worry about am I a Hindu or a Buddhist
Yeah.
because
Yeah, really.
maybe I'm just a past life therapist and all of that's sort of all part of it, but I
Uh-huh.
don't have to put on the robes this time. So
Right. And yeah, and hide yourself. You don't have to do that. Yeah. So how did
yeah,
you come out? When did you start to actually be a therapist, a hypnotherapist? And did you take a
yeah.
course or did you just know how to do it and just go with it?
Oh no, I had to take a course. And so, but that's a great question because I think people think, so what it tells me, and I've got the book is Past Life Awakening, 7 regression studies illustrates 7 spiritual laws. And I
Hmm.
did actually, out of the 7 case studies, one of them is me. So
Yeah.
I've I've inserted myself in it, so
Did you use your real name or did you pretend it was somebody else?
oh no, I do tell my own story, and I
Hmm.
did that on purpose because so I think a lot of people hear uh, hypnosis, they think, oh, Paul McKenna or someone cool like that.
Yeah.
Past lives, oh, Brian Weiss.
Right. Right.
Between lives, oh, Michael Newton. And
Hmm.
so one thing, and a lot of people, there are a lot of past life books that are just somebody broke their leg and or someone has a sore leg. They remembered they broke it in a past life and now they're better. And you just get a lot of stories like that. And like we get it, but I think those stories have been told. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of, but that was part of what had to be written in the earlier years. But
Hmm.
one thing Brian Weiss does, he does bring himself into it a bit more, particularly with Many Lives, Many Masters. It was very much about, his journey to awaken to how they work and the Catherine having spirit guides talking about the death of his son,
Hmm.
very personal stuff. And I think that's really engaging.
Right.
And I as a therapist, so my therapists don't know that I'm have a Buddhist connection or hear any of these stories,
Hmm.
but because in the therapeutic relationship, I don't need to be sitting here talking about myself, you know.
Right. Right.
But if you want, it's a different story. If you want to create an engaging book or a podcast, I can't just sit here and report on what other people did. You do have to bring in some of the personal connection,
Make
and
it
that is
personal,
important.
make it real. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And because for me, the very first law, or the spiritual law that I have is karma.
Hmm.
And by karma, I mean karmic connection, action, and residue. And it's not good or bad karma. And the second law is
What do
duality
you
to
what do
address
you
the fact.
what is karma to you? Because I've heard of
Yeah,
all different definitions of
yeah,
karma. So what is
yeah.
karma
Well,
to you?
as a definition, karma, the word itself just means action. And
Hmm.
it's an action of thought or deed. But and as a concept, it's the law of cause and effect.
Hmm.
And so why am I a past life therapist? Because there are past life causes that have the effect of me feeling a karmic connection to the work.
Hmm.
And so then you ask, so you've got a karmic connection to past lives, good for you. But
Yeah.
how does that mean you can just be a past life therapist? No, I have to take karmic actions to build upon those connections and work really hard.
Hmm.
Now, it helps to have some talent when you're doing something and some desire and motivation and passion for it and compulsion to do it. But if you don't take the action to back it up, then you can't do it, you know?
And you
And,
don't
even
think
the
that
Dalai
life
Lama,
pushes
sorry.
you to do it? Like
Oh, no,
in your
oh,
case where you were trying to be in Buddhist or into whatever, and then it
yeah,
kept
no,
pushing you back into the hypnotherapy.
yeah. But
You almost your
if it,
votes didn't count.
well, you know what? I was getting pushed all over the place, and I needed to
Hmm.
get pushed in a direction. But it's a great question because the life of that spiritual karmic connection can often push us in a direction, but what we do is push back in the opposite direction.
Right, right.
I could have easily, I had a karmic connection to past lives. I could have easily pushed back and say, I watched, I did hypnosis when I was 10. Well, I
Hmm.
watched Wall Street by Oliver Stone when I was 16. And I
Yeah,
decided
yeah,
I want to go in that direction. And I
yeah,
wanted to be
yeah.
on Wall Street and have people respect me, not a
Hmm.
past life person who people think is weird,
Right.
you know?
But do you think if you had stayed with that and that you had moved with your company to a different city, do you think you would have been happy? Or would that
I know.
karma had constantly been at you? Come this way, come this way. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question, and so I say I'm not a psychic, but I definitely have intuitions and feelings
Hmm.
at a conventional level where at a few times when I need to.
Yeah.
And there was something that I did have, and even in terms of spirituality, I felt myself to be intellectual, rational, etc.
Hmm.
But there's a certain point at which intellectual, rational cannot explain everything. For example, why, love.
Hmm.
You can't prove it, you can't measure it,
Yeah.
but we know it's there, and like we may not move for that job because our wife doesn't want to go. We love her, we stay.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
and so yeah, and so I had a sense actually, and it was a funny thing, and that was actually part of why like I wasn't really driven by any great suffering or any great history of trauma where I healed my own traumas and now I want to heal other people's traumas.
Hmm.
Funnily enough, my life was actually like pretty blessed and pretty great just from the get-go. Like I
Yeah.
had great opportunities. I fell backwards into money and status without, much problem.
Yeah.
But the weird thing was at an early age, I just felt there's something missing.
Hmm.
This isn't it. Like I got everything that I could want. Everything was great. And still I
Right.
was like, something's
Yeah.
missing. And that's a good question because I felt I saw my future, successful, status, good part of the community, helpful, everything, but sad. At
Hmm.
my core, that there was something I could have, should have, would have done and didn't. Everything's great, but there's something missing.
Right.
And I probably would have been okay, and there were a lot of future possibilities that could have been okay, but they weren't
Right.
one which was ultimately going to lead to a spiritual fulfillment.
Yeah. They weren't right for
Yeah.
you. It didn't, it wasn't right.
Well,
Yeah.
they were good,
Hmm.
but they weren't great, and they weren't the highest possibility, I think. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. So
yeah,
I see what you mean. You could have gone on, but it would have always felt that missing part.
yeah.
But have had a
Well,
successful life in the world's
yeah.
definition of success.
You know what? That actually reminds me of. I'll come back to that question about past lives. So I
Hmm.
did actually have a particular past life that really relates to this question.
Hmm.
And so, I had other questions about, if I'm not a medical doctor or a psychologist, how could I possibly be a therapist?
Yeah.
And I then got an answer to that
You
with
are
another
very
past life.
logical and very in the laws, in the rules.
Yeah, sure, sure.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but then I had, that was actually a thing where even just, and so yes, the other question, yes, I did have to study. So I went down and studied with a very good group, and that was the California Hypnosis Institute of
Mhm.
India. So it was
Yeah.
actually in India, but it was a curriculum that there's the Hypnosis Motivation Institute in California by Dr.
Mhm.
John Kappas, who, if anyone knows hypnosis, they'll know who he is. And he's created the HMI, which is a great curriculum and great training.
What does
And
HMI stand for? Sorry,
uh,
I don't know 'em.
hypnosis, sure, yeah. No, hypnosis, it's for hypnosis nerds. Hypnosis Motivation Institute
Hmm.
and Dr. John Kappas. And then he had a graduate who had spent 20 plus years in the United States, but he was born in India. And he
Hmm.
had, a lot of uh, degrees, etc. And like I think he had a PhD in transpersonal psychology. So he brought this training back to India, where Indians like me were
Yeah.
waiting for him. And
Hmm.
so I did that training in Delhi. But he wasn't teaching just hypnotherapy. He went pretty deep into past life regression and spirit release. So I trained with him, and it was sort of a 6 month course with a time on and off and practicing, doing case studies, etc. So it was kind of quite hard work, but really good training. And
Hmm.
then eventually later on, I went to Will Horton in Florida for the National Guild of Hypnotists, the NGH. Any hypnosis nerds will know that organization as well. So I did further training over the years, but definitely had a solid foundation in therapeutic techniques. But the thing was that even with that, so just as I was graduating that class after all the study that I'd done, I was
Yeah.
still thinking, this is nice, but I could just sort of go back and be a suit and everything's fine as well.
Hmm.
And then I had a recall to a specific past life, so I can tell that story
Yeah.
for a little bit if that's good.
Yeah. No, that's
Okay,
great.
and then we can swap because I want to hear your past life story as well.
Yeah.
But I'll go first. So
Hmm.
so I was 32 years old, had invested in and done all of this training in hypnotherapy and past life regression. But I was sort of thinking, okay, what next? Maybe I could just sort of go back to, a good life that I had, or maybe I could, really follow through with the hypnotherapy past life regression and make it a life task. But it's kind of a
Right.
risk, it's not an easy
It's
job.
it's a
I don't know
big
if you're getting,
leap. It's a big leap.
yeah,
Yeah. And frightening
yeah,
one too. People don't realize how, to walk away from a secure lifestyle into the unknown and let's see if it works and you're a weirdo. You know, all
yeah,
those things, how hard it really is. Yeah.
yeah. And by that time, I don't care that much what people think, but I do care if I can eat.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know,
Right.
and no guarantee of that. And so,
Yeah.
literally 19 years, if I don't hypnotize people, I don't eat.
Hmm.
I've had no money from anything else ever, and it is scary.
Right.
Day by day, week by
How
week,
did you
month by
start
month.
your practice?
With a, well, again, because I got into alignment, I had a bit of luck along the way.
Hmm.
But I literally graduated in India and spent my first couple of years in India. I went
Hmm.
first to Goa because I thought foreigners will be there and I can pick up some of the foreigners who are sort of a bit spiritual, and maybe
Right.
the Indians won't accept me, but at least I've got some foreigners there. And 90% of 95% of all my clients were Indian, and they were
So much for
amazing
planning.
clients.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
I was there for like 8 months, and I realized, wow, I'm accepted by Indian people.
Hmm.
And so then I just moved to Bangalore, which is, full of upper middle class Indians who
Hmm.
their English is amazing, their spiritual awareness is amazing, and my karmic connection to them is, amazing. I love
Yeah.
them, the people. Feel a deep connection to them. I got so many friends. I mean, I feel really my personnel, and I really felt just so comfortable in India.
Hmm.
And New Zealand's a great place and everything, but there was a
Right.
little level of disconnect that I felt. And it wasn't because I was a spiritual, because I'm sitting there talking about Rama when I'm a
Yeah.
kid or anything, but I just never felt, fully a New Zealander. But in India, I felt, and India's a huge place. So,
Yeah. Oh,
but overall, I felt really comfortable there. And
mhm.
so I was, so I had that connection and for those 2 years. And then uh, shortly, and with only 2.5 years experience, I was then able to, again, I just had, again, a lot of good luck and a lot of things falling into place. I went to Thailand for a couple of weeks and ended up there for 10 years.
Wow.
And,
You're not
and,
great at planning.
terrible. Yeah.
Yeah.
And but I also worked at resorts that I had no business being in really because the practitioners there were world class, very experienced senior guys who were just experts in their field. And I stumbled in with 2.5 years
Mm.
and they said, oh, just we'll give you a trial for, a week or two. You do any client comes out and says it was okay, you're gone. They have to
Yeah.
come out and go, wow, that guy was good.
Yeah.
And so I was able to work in these
That's a lot
places
of
where
pressure
they
right there. A lot of
yeah,
pressure.
but
Yeah.
yeah, again, like confidence is all, so if I feel pressure or confidence, if I've got to hypnotize myself to be confident and also, yeah, and have a faith as well. But yeah, it all just sort of fell into place really. But I
So they
also
came
worked
out and
incredibly
said,
hard.
wow, he's great.
Yeah, pretty much,
Yeah.
honestly. Because if you're not great at that level, you don't survive. But it
Hmm.
also, I'd worked so hard to get, in those 2.5 years, I kind of mentored myself. I did a lot of meditation and hypnosis to on how, and I was just that's all I was 24/7. That's all I thought about. I wasn't in a relationship. I didn't have any
Right.
hobbies. I was just, I got to get really good at this
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's all I thought about it. And things went my way, and I was able to. Then they gave me so many great clients, and I
Hmm.
would be doing 4 or 5 sessions a day, 6 days a week, 4 months a year on the high season. Which if you're at that's insane, you know.
Yeah, I
And
was thinking that,
yeah,
I
yeah,
froze when you said that many. I thought, wow. How
yeah.
long is a session usually?
I do 90-minute sessions as well.
Okay, that's what I thought. They're usually an hour and a half.
Yeah,
And when you said
yeah.
6, 7, it's like, oh my God.
That's maybe 4 or 5 a day and 6 days a week.
Oh, wow.
So yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah, yeah, it really was. And so I
Yeah.
was
I mean,
initiated
it's
big time, but that
entertaining. It's entertaining, to
yeah,
watch
I mean,
somebody else's story really come out. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, exactly. And so, a
Mhm.
lot of times, some days I'd be tired at the end of the day, but a lot of times it's so energizing and so much fun
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
it's great, And so like if it was too much, I would have said no, but I did that for years, you
Yeah.
know. And and it was seasonal. So in the off season, if you did like 1 or 2 sessions a day, 6 days a week, you'd be like, it's like, oh, it's holiday. This is
Mm.
nothing.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
but but you can't, I don't know if I don't do that now and I wouldn't want to, but what it did mean is that I learned an incredible amount in my first 8 years and
Hmm.
and then I just needed a break. So I flew off to Florida and did trainer training and
Right.
felt even though it's only 8 years, I've done 20 years of work in 8 years, I'm going to start
Hmm.
teaching.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, did you
Yeah.
find a theme when you were, working all the time? Was there a theme of the people who showed up in front of you? That because I always look for themes
Yeah.
that are reflecting back. Okay, why do I keep getting the same thing? That must be about me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So did
Sure.
you see a
Yep.
theme when you were working there?
Yeah, well, I mean, I teach people as well. And so, what I see, the themes that I see at the beginning, for people in the first 2 or 3 years of doing this work,
Hmm.
whatever healing that they need to work on in their life, the clients will bring in very similar issues.
Hmm.
And then the client's spirit guide will talk to them and give them advice and
Yeah.
say, understand this, do that. And the spirit guide's talking to the client, but then the therapist is going, this is for me as well.
Yeah.
And
That's
sometimes
what I meant. Yeah.
yeah, and sometimes they're even thinking, I don't even know if it's for the client. I mean, the first half of the session was healing the client, but this second half, I mean, it's not no harm for them to hear this, but they're talking to me. They're
Yeah.
healing me with this. So I'm supposed to be the healer, but they're healing me. So that's a
Hmm.
massive part of the first few years. And I see that with
Yeah.
a lot of students that I have. But for me now, and so again, like when I was in that intense phase in those resorts, there wasn't really a pattern. It was just like a download of everything that could possibly happen.
Right.
But it's a still interesting question because what I see now is that in the book, Past Life Awakening, a big theme in that is a lot of I now basically work mainly with healers or people on the spiritual path.
Mm-hmm.
So since I teach healers and have gone through a pretty long journey, a lot of the people I make most of the people that I hypnotize are hypnotists,
Yeah.
or I do past life regression on people who are past lives or psychics or have
Right.
a strong background or have studied many modalities or a psychologist or a doctors or something.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I tend to get now. And the big themes are what are the things like, the universe is pushing you to be a healer
Mm-hmm.
or be on the spiritual path, go be a monk, be a therapist, whatever it is. But we
Right.
push back because we
Yeah.
are still bought into this finite sense that I can't do this. I'm from New York and that,
And
I'm
I
not
have a
from
nice living like you did, and I'm
exactly.
secure,
I'm,
and yeah, I'm looked
yeah.
up to, and I
And
have a nice house and a nice
yeah.
income. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm not from Haradwar, and I can't walk around with,
Right.
just a robe. I mean, how am I
Yeah.
supposed to live
Yeah.
like that? I'm
Yeah.
not conditioned for it, you know.
Hmm. But again,
And so,
karma, as you said, pushes. It leaves you
yeah,
feeling like, yeah.
you know what? Although I'll come back to that, what's that specific past life. So it turned out everything went fine for me, and
Hmm.
so I think things would have kind of gone good materially, but I would have
Right.
felt something spiritually that I missed. And so it's
Yeah.
actually a good question because just as I was wrapping up that training, I still had the option to go back and put on the suit one last time and just
Right.
sort of get a real job and stop. When you're in your 20s and you're traveling around and exploring things, it's cute. But when you're
Right.
in your 30s, it's like, grow up, you're an adult now,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. You're out
And,
of step
and so
now. Yeah.
yeah. So I had to
Hmm.
decide. And so just as I was graduating, my teacher led us in a group regression.
Hmm.
And again, I go back and so I'm thinking, do I stay? Do I go? I've got an opportunity to walk this path. What do I do? And I remember being in a past life. I was in my early 30s at that time,
Yeah.
and I was in my early 30s in North India, but it felt like the 1600s,
Hmm.
and I could see kind of like the old buildings. And I thought, oh, maybe I'm making this up. The Red Fort in Delhi, it kind of looks a bit like that. Or I've been in Agra and I've
Yeah.
got forts down
You
there, and
always feel
maybe
like
I'm
when
just.
you're doing it that you're making it up, don't you? Yeah, yeah.
It,
I always
uh,
feel like I'm making it up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, you know what? That's true, but there's always an element of that,
Right.
and to the point where it's actually okay. But what I find is that emotion kicks in, and
Hmm.
so I was thinking, and here's the thing. Again, I was in hypnosis,
Right.
thinking I'm making it up, and you can be
Yeah.
in hypnosis wondering if you're in hypnosis or not, and
Yeah.
so therefore you block yourself, stop it, and you go, oh, it doesn't work.
Hmm.
But here's the thing,
Right.
don't get in your own way. Don't you it's okay to be thinking that, but just
Hmm.
keep going. And so
Yeah.
what happened is my teacher kept going and he said, look at your feet. So I'm
Hmm.
like, okay, I can see my feet and I've got these kind of sandals. I can see my feet and it's a bit dusty and they're kind of dark and okay. And then I sort of looked up and I could see and I just thought I was looking around, oh, this is all just familiar. Then I just went "Zzz," like a shock of recognition. And I could see a sage with a white beard and a
Hmm.
white robe. He was in his robe, he was comfortable, and
Yeah.
he's got his bronze skin. He
Hmm.
was like completely in himself. Just the
Yeah.
authority that he walked. He just strode up to me, and as he spoke to me, I felt his wisdom. He knew who I was. I knew who he was, and
Yeah.
then he just started talking to me, just saying these wise words.
Hmm.
Now I can't remember what those words were. I couldn't hear him,
Yeah.
but but I could feel his energy. And I'd felt as well that when I'm there in my 30s, I had some kind of privilege and position. I
Hmm.
wasn't rich that I had to worry about money and all of that stuff, but I wasn't poor where I had to worry about labor. I
Yeah.
was just in a sort of very comfortable middle where I could just get away with reading a book here and there
Hmm.
and having some nice food and not working too hard, not having, just sort of a nice in
Right.
between place, which a lot of us are kind of now in this world, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Happily so,
we can,
God.
yeah. I mean, sometimes we work hard, but then do have quite a lot of time for TikTok,
Hmm.
or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so I had that sense of, I've got this position and privilege, and it affords me the opportunity. I get to meet a spiritual person like this. I got the
Hmm.
time to listen to what he says. He says this is what's of value in life, and it's not the distractions, it's not the money, it's follow a spiritual path, listen to what I say. And I had a sense that, yes, this guy's right. This is amazing. I karmically connect to him.
Hmm.
But then I thought, oh, I wonder what actions I take. I've got that opportunity. I meet a wise man. Do I then become wise and listen to what he says? And we played it forward, and they say, so this is what we often do in past life regression. Okay, you've got a thing there. What does it mean? I don't know. Play it
Right.
forward, see what happens next. And so next thing you know, I'm 20 years older. I'm in my 50s. And I
Hmm.
go, oh, I'm looking around. It's like, oh, everything kind of seems the same. We're supposed to go forward and things are supposed to progress. Then I
Hmm.
realized, oh shit, the absence of change and development is the message.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh man, I'm in my
Yeah.
50s. I'd been drawn to these teachers. I thought, oh, I'll listen to them. That's great. I'll do that, but I'll
Mhm.
put it off till tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I'd been complacent. I was too comfortable. Tomorrow never came. 20 years is gone.
Hmm. And this is in your regression, right?
Yeah.
It's showing you you've got to move, you've got to
Yeah.
act.
Well, but here's the thing. I saw that, but then, I mean, I'm getting a bit emotional thinking about it now, but then I just had this feeling. And so
Hmm.
I just felt this visceral, I had this shock of there's a spiritual master, great. But then I'd had the thing of, well, you didn't listen, you had a karmic connection, you didn't take
Yeah.
karmic action, you didn't follow it up. I just felt such regret,
Yeah.
just visceral, piercing regret, and just so emotionally choked up. Just felt
Mhm.
sad. I felt shamed. The
Yeah.
the the the, the teacher says, oh, okay, 3, 2, 1, come back to the room. And I'm just sitting there going, you know,
Uh,
my my
yeah.
my friends say, oh, what happened? And I'm like, can't talk about it. You know, like, oh, I don't want to tell you, I'm ashamed of it. And
Mm.
so, like, I realized, and I was just walking around going, and I just felt this, like, just a real strong emotion. And like, I had a precious opportunity. I squandered it. I was
Yeah.
complacent. I had pointless comfort and ease. I awakened at the end. It was too late. What have I done? And so, just sitting there, I'm 32, thinking,
Yeah.
I don't want to do that again. I don't want to be 52,
Uh-huh.
thinking, oh, coulda, shoulda, woulda, didn't. And so that lit a fire under me. So,
Hmm.
so I
And is that
graduate
why that past life came up for you, do you think? To say, move.
100%.
Here's what'll happen if you don't move. Yeah.
And that's the question you asked me. You know what? And I had this feeling, oh, everything will probably be fine, but there'll be something a little bit missing.
Hmm.
And so clever me. But my spirit guide said, no, buddy, it's worse than that.
Right.
You'll be, you'll hurt. It'll hurt.
Do
And I felt
people
that.
at the end of their life, when I see people at the end of their life, they turn around and look at their life and
Yeah.
see it in an instant, and their plan and what was, and it's all very quick, very instantaneous. I'm always dealing with the people who look at the wrong side and get stuck. They're the
Okay.
ones that kind of are sitting in front of me, and then I have to go in and have them turn again and look at the good side, to unstick them.
Okay.
And if I don't do it,
Yeah.
spirits will come in and do it. But, since they're sitting in front of me, I do it. Yeah. But that's what I see. You turn and you look at your life, and that kind of regret will come up
Yeah.
if you've not
Yeah.
done what you came in to do, really. If you've not
Yeah.
done it, that regret.
Yeah, and it was kind of a warning. And again, like
Yeah.
it's something that, and like that's why when I graduated and went down to Goa or Bangalore, I
Hmm.
wasn't, let's do a couple of past life regressions and then, go swimming and go to the bar and meet people. I was like,
Right.
I haven't got time for that. I've been fooling around for 20 years in India
Hmm.
in the 1600s. I can't sit here and fool around in India again. I've got work to
Right.
do.
Right.
Like this is the priority. And so it lit a fire under me. And
Uh-huh.
I've kind of worked pretty hard then. Before I was complacent and lazy. This
Right.
time I took every opportunity and worked as hard as I could on it.
Hmm.
And now it's sort of funny that the book comes out after 20 years. And I was trying to write that, I was literally writing case studies, as soon as I graduated, 20 years ago.
Right.
But it's only now that the story comes out. And reading it back, it's like, oh, wow. that I thought I would have had a book out way earlier because I was,
Yeah.
just, but then I got busy and had a lot of stuff. But I
Yeah.
realize now, remembering the story from 20 years ago, I'm like, well, I've just woken up now and 20 years has gone by like that. Now I'm 52 and now I'm
Hmm.
satisfied with the path that I've taken. And,
Yeah.
I didn't repeat that mistake. So there's a repeat. And so there's a loop there. And I
Yeah.
learn from there's a lesson. I learned
Mhm.
my lesson and I did better this time. And I passed the test of not being afraid to jump into something new and or
Right.
not being complacent and sitting back. So yeah,
And you published your book. You put it together.
yeah,
Yeah.
got it
Yeah.
done.
Why did you
Yeah, and
chose the case studies that you chose? Why did you choose those? Because you've got thousands. Yeah.
yeah, well, exactly. Got a lot to choose from, but I
Hmm.
chose ones. Well, very honest answer is that AI came along and made life a lot easier because
Yeah. Yeah, it
so
does.
because
So it
if
went
you're
through
right.
your case studies and picked them?
Oh no, I tell you what happened is I only used AI to transcribe.
Uh-huh.
So be clear about that. And so, like if I've got, hundreds of notebooks with my
Yeah.
scribbled notes about what happened in the session. Okay.
Yeah.
But remember, if
Okay.
I'm doing like four a day,
Hmm.
and I'm a very in the present kind of a thing, which is I find it hard to remember stuff because like I'm in it, I'm doing it, and then it's gone.
Right. It's
And
a different
so it
alternative state, really, that I
absolutely.
don't
And
find there's memory. I don't, when
I
I just don't have the memory of what went
exactly.
on.
And so
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, so like that's a finite conscious mind with short-term memory. But when we're
Hmm.
doing this work, we're in a hypnotic state or a super subconscious state, then it's even just hard to bring that back in. And so I found it really useful. I would just record, and so for the last 5 years, I've been recording all my sessions on Zoom,
Yeah.
and also as well, the universe sent me the right clients at the right time
Hmm.
just like within actually quite a short period of time, a lot of the ones for the case studies because they're all I was just amazed that I need one kind of I've got a few good ones, but I just need one who's going to be like this. Hello, I would like to book a session. It's the
Yeah.
one that I was wanting.
Yeah.
It all just falls into place. But also wanted, and what I wanted was examples where it wasn't just they where every one of them had an important this life, an
Hmm.
important past life, an important between life, and half of them had an important spirit release story. And so that way people could see, I'm a hypnotherapist. I hypnotize people and I help them by going to this life. And then they
Hmm.
can read that case study and see, oh, that's really like a kind of client that I'd have. Then they go, and then Mark got them back for another session. They did this, and they're like, wait a second, you can do that?
Yeah.
I see Mark did a good job on hypnotherapy, like I would have done, but then he
Hmm.
took it to another level. And if I learn past life regression more or better, then maybe I could do that as well. And I see the possibility. But then
Now,
the
give
next
me
thing,
an
and what
example of that, of somebody that you've brought through. And I don't know, like, I talked about what I see where somebody turns around, but tell me about your inner in between lives and spirit release. I'm not sure I understand that.
yeah, okay, yeah. So that is actually spirit release is definitely less understood,
Hmm.
and they are half of the cases in the book, and so that's actually a big reason to write the book, because I give that example. A hypnotherapist may have their eyes open to past life regression, but to a large degree, that's kind of already happened culturally. But to a lesser degree, people say, I do past lives, even between lives has become pretty well known now. Michael Newton, Robert Schwartz,
Yeah,
Your
but I
Soul's
want to hear what
Plan.
you say about it. I want,
Yeah,
your version of Between Lives.
yeah. And so, well, it's, it is pretty much in alignment with these guys say. And
Hmm.
so there
But let's
is a
say,
well-defined, oh, yeah,
give me one of your case studies, where
okay,
you've regressed
sure.
them and then come between lives and spirit release.
Okay. Yeah.
Give
So
me an
this is
example if you don't mind. Yeah.
yeah. No, that's fine. So it's like a bit of a story. I can give a shorter or longer version, but I'm thinking one of them, this is where, what's the extra step I can take?
Mm-hmm.
And so we can go to past lives, and past lives in hypnotherapy, oftentimes you can get into this idea of forgiveness,
Mm-hmm.
which is, and so even the spiritual laws, there's a finite self, but then there's an infinite self.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's like, how do we bridge that? And so in between that, there can be a karmic self. And so there's this idea, what is it that reincarnates? And it's not our personality.
Mm-hmm.
So in a sense, this, so that's why I could have been, had that deep regret because, I had a precious opportunity in that past body and I didn't take it. I could
Right.
just say, well, who cares? I'm just going to have another life, so it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. I'll do it
But,
next time.
yeah, but
Yeah.
which I think is too easy and not quite right. And so I
Mm-hmm.
think we have to acknowledge the importance of the finite and the precious opportunities that we have. And we can't just say, because I've got past lives, then I don't have to, I can put it off until tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I put it off until tomorrow, and that was 20 years.
Right.
And then you put it off to another life. But if you do that, what happens, to answer your question, is that you end up in the between life space.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, buddy, we put you in India. We made you an Indian. You've been in. I'd been in India before as a British person who wanted to learn from the Indians, but my
Mm-hmm.
culture of the British Empire said, "Don't go native, don't speak, don't go with them," and they kicked me out and punished me for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, well, they said to you, "Look, you wanted to be Indian, you wanted to get to know it. We put you in this good opportunity as an Indian, and you blew it." And so,
Yeah.
in the between life state, your spirit guides can say, "We gave you these opportunities, and you missed them." And
Mm-hmm.
so that's a pattern. And they might even say things like, no, and this is the third time.
Oh,
And,
geez,
you
yeah.
know, you got, or in fact, even a case study that I'm thinking of, there was also a woman. She's actually Indian. This was the earliest case study I've got in the book. She's
Mm-hmm.
in Bangalore, and she had an issue with her mother.
Mm-hmm.
So she was a very vivacious lady, but she had weight issues, and so she was 30. She was a bit overweight. She was
Mm-hmm.
very bubbly and nice, but she was shutting down as a sexual being,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore not getting into relationships, not meeting soul partners, etc. And she even felt that she was doing that despite her mother, who wanted her to get married. She'd
Mm-hmm.
had this very conflicting relationship with her mother, where her mother would mock her. So as she was a good-looking young girl, she was sort of voluptuous, and she'd just start the minute she started putting on makeup, her mother would mock her for wearing makeup. You're trying to look like a lady, call her a rude word. Or
Mm-hmm.
then she would grow up and she'd be like 13, 14. She'd be spilling out of her dress, and her father would be not want to hug her anymore. Her mother would sort of feel that she's competition and be mean to her.
Yeah.
And, she actually came to me thinking, I want to do weight loss, hypnotize me so I don't eat bread so that I lose weight.
Yeah.
And and then we went, and then as is common, we went into some of this life occasions so in order for us to know all of that, we regressed to this life and
Mm-hmm.
had these difficult times that she was replaying. My mother said this and that, and she actually experienced a form of abuse,
Mm-hmm.
and ran to her mother and said this happened, and she was not helped. She was blamed, and so
Mm-hmm.
she's like, so the mother's pretty tough on her. And then
Right.
she went back into a past life where her mother was her husband.
Yeah.
And her husband was, and this actually in America, there was sort of as a bit of an old west, guns, gambling. The husband lost some money. The husband's
Mm-hmm.
friend came in, and so trigger alert for people who, but things got also fairly nasty. She ended up
Mm-hmm.
being another form of abuse, uh, kicked in the stomach,
Ooh.
and and eventually killed
Yeah.
by this person who's supposed to love her. So, this is heavy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and yet, in the context of all of this, there's loving energy around. So if people are thinking, I don't really know if I want to do past life regression or remember all these horrible things,
Yeah.
you know, I've got enough horrible things in this life. Why do I have to go and remember how it was sort of doubled up in a past life? But the
Mm-hmm.
funny thing is, and why would I want to do this for 4 or 5 times a day if I have to listen to these horrible stories the whole
All
time?
right.
But the
Right.
funny thing is, the context of it, spirit guides, and just love and infinite loving, compassionate energy is around us the whole time.
Hmm.
and it comes up when it needs to. So you'd think, in the raw, this would be very hard to deal with, but somehow people just do it matter of factly, gather the information, and move on.
There's
And
a
so we live,
neutrality. Yeah, there's a neutrality kind of.
and yeah, absolutely. I call it an equanimity.
Hmm.
So you can easily look at this and think, that's bad. I want to feel good. I don't want to feel bad.
Hmm.
And so this is where my second law is duality. And it's not non-duality, it's duality. We're born into a dualistic world to experience duality, not to run away from it, but to experience it and to go to it, through it, beyond it. And if
Hmm.
we can go into these bad feelings, but what can we learn from them? So what happened was, she'd had this, she was killed. She
Hmm.
went into an in-between state.
Hmm.
And there she met her spirit guides who help educate her into the lessons that have been learned, tell her that she's been in these situations time and time again, but now it's time to break the pattern.
Hmm.
And but then, so there's a spirit guides who help, as you say, you can look back on it and you can learn realize the life purpose and the lessons you're learning.
Yeah.
But there's also a part where you can meet your soul group.
Hmm.
So she continued on, and and as a soul, she felt herself to be like a fairly formless energy, but with a
Hmm.
conscious awareness and surrounded by a loving kind of a good feeling of the spiritual dimension. And she saw a number of sort of shimmering lights nearby. So they're just sort of light energy that don't have a face, a gender, a personality, anything like that.
Hmm.
But she moved towards some of these soul group energies, and she recognized, that's my mum.
Okay.
And that she was also my husband, she was my mother. She saw that
Hmm.
she'd been many other things as well. And she realized in some other past lives that she'd been very hung up on her looks,
Hmm.
getting attention from people, feeling very validated, that being very into sensuality, and just sort of just getting stuck in that loop
Yeah.
of external validation, being an attractive person, and never really developing beyond that.
Hmm.
Very material, conventional, sensual, but not particularly spiritual.
Hmm.
And she needed to sort of get kicked out of that loop. And because so she remembered part of the life review was she remembered being uh, abused, kicked in the stomach, and I
Hmm.
believe she had some pregnancy, and she was sort of beaten to death, but particularly kicked in the stomach, and that's where a lot of her obesity was centered around just carrying a lot of protective layers in her stomach. And she
Yeah.
said, as she was dying, she was laying there thinking, there must be more to life than this.
Yeah.
And for the 7 lifetimes beforehand, she wasn't thinking there was more to life than this. She was thinking being hot and having cute guys chase me and me being
Yeah.
beautiful and me being at the center of attention. And I'm a dancer and the whole, she's a gypsy in another life and
Hmm.
the whole tribe, appreciates me. And I just love to be seen and I'm so
Adoration.
elegant and
Yeah.
beautiful. Exactly. So she
Adoration.
loved all
Yeah.
that. And there was
Yeah.
nothing more. What's more to life than that?
Right.
That feels great. But then soon, you can't do that forever. And so
Hmm.
sooner or later, she realized that. And so then she realized that you kicking the crap out of me and taking this thing that I'd been seduced by my own beauty, but
Yeah.
you wiped the beauty off my face with the end of your rifle, and you kicked the my beautiful form, my beautiful hourglass form, you just kicked it into nothingness.
Hmm.
And in that moment, you started my spiritual awakening process
Hmm.
of me getting out of that loop and thinking there must be something else. I'm going to go on the spiritual path.
Hmm.
And with that, and it's just such a weird paradox, but she realized that that was a beautiful moment of awakening on her spiritual path, lying, dying on the floor with bullet wounds and abuse and wounds in her stomach. And so she was able to then go into the between lives realm, see that mother and
Hmm.
husband as a soul that was beautiful, and to have that awareness that yes, it was bad, yes, it was horrible, but I transcend duality and badness. It's actually okay. That and they said, that this is what you kickstart my spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
Thank you.
They were of service.
I'm,
Yeah. They were of service. Yeah.
I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for you murdering and abusing me.
Yeah.
and she then just started radiating this beautiful light, and the mother soul said, "Oh, don't you look so beautiful in your spiritual makeup?"
Wow.
Just like she'd mocked her as a kid in this life, and then made that joke. So I mean, just sense of humor, but
Yeah, yeah.
also just, I mean, just how transcendent,
Hmm.
So like I
Is
suffer,
that
things
the
are
spirit
bad, I'm
release?
a victim. Oh no, this is between lives.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Because I don't know what
yeah.
spirit release is too.
Yeah. Okay. So that's yes. We'll do a hard segue then because that's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
bit of a
Well,
different
you
bit
know,
of a
wait
different
a minute
thing.
before we do that. As she came out of this regression with this knowledge, what did she
Yeah.
do with the knowledge? How did that change her? Before
Well,
I
she'd
bring you
come in
somewhere
what?
else.
Yeah. Well, great question. She'd come in literally saying, "I want to be hypnotized for weight loss.
Hmm.
Tell me not to eat bread, then I'll lose 10 kg, then I'll be happy,
Yeah, yeah.
or 20 pounds."
Hmm.
And she realized, and then she came out of it, and she was, just blown away,
Right.
and said, "I feel so much lighter."
Hmm.
And I said, "What, you mean 10 pounds lighter? So because of the lack of bread?" And she was like, "Ha ha ha. No,
Yeah.
I feel spiritually lighter."
Hmm.
And so that's kind of the outcome. So people carry, so that the karma for me is karmic connection, action, and residue. So
Hmm.
she had a connection to that person. They had actions that could be very good or bad,
Right.
but she was carrying a heavy residue of
Hmm.
getting stuck into being a seductive, beautiful person, and then getting kicked out of that into there must be more to life. Like for me, money and status. Well, there's got to be more to life.
Right.
Being beautiful and having rich people wanting me. Well, there's probably more to life. And
Hmm.
so either way, we were kicked out of that, one way or another. And
Yeah.
sometimes, she probably held on to that beauty too long. She probably got a
Hmm.
whisper. The universe will whisper to us, go do something else. If we don't listen for 6 lives in a row, it'll start yelling and kicking,
Right. Right. And
you know?
making it very uncomfortable. Like her, she came in with, this isn't working.
Yeah.
I'm uncomfortable here. Yeah.
Yeah. And the end result is just that is a lightness.
Hmm.
And so that meant, so we never mentioned like coffee or anything, but she said, I used to have like 5 coffees a day with 3 spoons of sugar, and I
Hmm.
just kept upping the dose. But I realized that that wasn't really helping or working. Now I don't, I just drop coffee altogether. So that's instantly,
Yeah.
800 calories down already. And I feel a lot more energetic
Hmm.
and weight is coming off. But I also feel, she came in, like she said, she'd shut down as a sexual being and she wasn't able to connect with people. And then she was just saying, I'm back to my flirtatious, bubbly, open self. And I haven't lost all of the weight yet, but I
Hmm.
feel I'm able to reclaim that sensuality, but in a healthy kind of a way. So I'm
Yeah.
not carrying the weight of, because there was a real push pull. So she was like, I'm really attracted to men, but I'm afraid they're going to shoot, kill me, and beat me up.
Right. Right. So she was
And but
stuck.
that's
Yeah.
as what's the past life residue, and it
Hmm.
made sense then, and it was a powerful imprint. But she didn't need to have that feeling now, and she also carried a lot of the weight because if I have a big weight that will protect me from the attraction. So she learned, don't be too sensual and beautiful. And so she was still good looking when she was young, but she thought, what can I do to break this pattern? I'll just make myself overweight this time and make myself unattractive or less attractive in the
Hmm.
eyes of some. She's like, I don't have to do that. I can be beautiful, but I don't have to be seduced and sucked into and live only
Right.
for the sensual. I can still be a beautiful, attractive person and have healthy relationships and follow a spiritual path.
Hmm.
I don't have to be like one versus the other like
Yeah.
that.
Either or. Yeah. How was she with their
Yeah.
mother after that? How was that relationship?
Yeah, actually, I can't remember actually if the mother had passed away already or not. Um, yeah, I can't remember, but
Hmm.
yeah. Well, actually, it's a good question though because sometimes it's sort of funny. So, as I think about how just in general with other people, a lot of times what happens is if you've got a cantankerous relationship with somebody, people often think. I mean, I got a problem with my mother. I wish you could hypnotize her.
Yeah. Yeah. Fix
you
her.
know, and
Yeah.
ex-
Yeah.
exactly. But then we that but what she as she fixed herself, I believe, and if I'm not exactly right on this one, in general, what tends to happen is that um, they fix themselves, and then suddenly they get a call from their mom. Hey, listen, I just wanted to apologize for this thing that I said. Anyway, why don't you come over? Like that.
hmm So as
And
their
so
vibration lightens up, the people around
and
them change. Yeah.
so if you go over to them and demand an apology, you're not going to get it.
Right.
But if you do the healing work on yourself, just sit back and don't be surprised if you get a call from somebody out of the blue apologizing.
hmm Yeah.
Yeah.
What is spirit release though? Because I would have
Yeah.
thought that was spirit release. That she
Um,
released that well,
mm,
you call it karma or that memory.
yeah. Yeah. That's when you don't even have to call it karma. You could just call it a residual of emotion and
hmm
limiting beliefs and energy. Yeah. But so for me, that between lives realm that we're talking about, the main spiritual beings that are at play there are a spirit guide,
hmm
a soul group, and then a soul council.
hmm
So it's actually the spirit guide said, look back and remember what you learned from this life.
Right.
The soul group is, listen, we're in a bunch of reincarnations. I'm your mom, I'm your husband, I was your, your pimp, your everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when you get to the soul council, that's where they tell you, listen, lady, you've done this 7 times in a row. If you don't break the pattern in this life, you're going to come back for another round of 7. Like this is your big chance to break through. So, put down the bread and
hmm
get out there and meet the soul person that's ready for you, because that's part of
Yeah.
the life plan that you had. And you can go and do a suboptimal way, but it's also part of your karma to have that experience, in hypnosis and
hmm
to connect with it. So they're your three main spirit entities in between life.
Yeah.
And then there are another three in spirit release, which is you can have earthbound spirits,
hmm
dark force entities, and ET attachments. And so it's a whole different group. And so probably the
Give
most
me an
common one is,
example of that of spirit release.
yeah.
You
So
have time? Are we good?
yep, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got there's kind of long stories in the book, but cut a long story short,
hmm
earthbound spirits are the most common one. And so I had somebody come, and so the first thing with spirit release is people tend to uh overdiagnose it and
hmm
and and see spirit release issues where there may not necessarily be some. And so that's the first thing. The second one is there are levels. There can be minor or simple issues, and then there can be complex issues.
hmm
So a lot of people, I think, see what I would call a simple issue, but then I go and document complex issues in the book. But at a simple issue, people might find, and they in regression, that I'm taking them back to a past life, or but then they realize, oh, this isn't their life. This is the past life of an attached entity, or the entity just comes in and people so in my case studies they're complex. So a lot of times people don't even know they've got an entity, but
hmm
during some sort of spiritual healing work it comes up, and then they say, who is this? I'm an entity. I've been stuck. I'm confused. I'm lost. I've been here for a couple of years or a couple of months. And people say, well, you're on earthbound. You need to go into the light. They may tell them to go into the light, bring in Archangel Michael, maybe regress them back to the day they died, replay it and say, do it right this time and go into the light. And that's it.
Now,
So
is
it
the
takes
entity attached to a person who's come to you, or how do you meet the entity?
Yeah, and so yeah, that's a good point. And so, as a therapist, I meet them by my client perceiving them.
hmm
Yeah, so,
They
and they
they feel
may,
like there's somebody else there, or there's a sabotage, or
yeah, so they can have them, they can perceive them prior to the sessions by writing an intake form. And
hmm
and in the example that I give, well, one of my case studies, a person says, I have a spirit attached to me. Its name is whatever it was. I'll have to remember.
So they remember
And
that much. They're that aware of the other
oh
species.
yeah,
Yeah.
in complex cases, yes.
Hmm.
Sometimes they don't know what a spirit attachment is. I'm going through, and so actually, what I'll do. So this is a technical thing. So we will regress people, go to a safe place, send light through your body. Uh, Sometimes we'll say, let an X-ray of light go through your body and send loving light energy through your body.
Hmm.
And and then you can actually ask and observe what happens as you do that. Are there any areas of dark or shadow, and or what happens as you send that light through their body and they say, oh, something's moving on my knee. Well, that knee pain that I told you about, it's sort of moved to the shoulder and it's trying to avoid this light.
Hmm.
And then they'll say, oh, it's saying, no, leave me alone. And so that's how you find it. They
Wow.
think they had just had some knee pain. And so
Yeah.
you shine a light over them as you'll often do in some sort of meditative regression or hypnotic regression, and you'll scan through their body to see, what's happening with them energetically. And you may just do it with the intention of sending loving energy. Then they'll say, oh, there's something there that doesn't like this loving energy. It's saying
Hmm.
stop it, or don't do that, or it's feeling pain, or it's trying to avoid us. And so then we'll say, if that could say something, what would it say? It'll be leave me alone.
Hmm.
And then just start a conversation. So my approach is really conversational through whatever they're perceiving psychically in their own mind. And and then they might say, oh, leave me alone. I'm confused. And why are you attached to this person? Well, they've come to you for anxiety, and I felt that same anxiety. So one of the very first times I found this
Hmm.
was a guy came in and he said, people sort of say that my face is shifting weirdly and I've got this weird energy coming and I don't know if it's me. And he went back to a time where he was in only like a few months beforehand, he was in built up traffic.
Hmm.
And what had happened is, and he was getting road rage.
Hmm.
He was super annoyed and angry that the traffic was there and he was in a hurry. And what had happened was that there was a motorcycle accident. The
Yeah.
guy had died, was super angry that he was dead, popped out of his body, just furious. And then he found the energy of this guy with road rage and he vibed with it and didn't want to be dead, wanted to be angry, and then stuck onto the anger energy of this guy.
So it's an emotional match where they're emotionally matching, and with that match can attach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was an extra element that there was a kind of a vulnerability. So even just having, a lot of anger can open you up. And
Hmm.
so they can sort of feed off that energy. They're
Right.
attracted to it, they vibe with it. And so that's why if you send loving light through, they're like, oh, I don't like this. But if
Right.
they feel someone who's sort of really angry, they're like, oh, I like that. And they can feed on it. And not only they can not only feed on it, they can sort of exacerbate it to a degree.
Hmm.
And so I have people say, I'm angry, but I think some of this anger isn't even me.
Right. It makes no sense. There's not
Yeah.
a reason. Did that person recognize, did he know that something had attached? Or he
He, no,
just
he
felt
did.
rage all the time then, and there was no reason.
Yeah.
Like stuck in traffic, you know what it is while you're upset, but when you're just sitting home alone having a cup of coffee and you're pissed
Yeah.
off, then you start to think, well, what am I pissed off about? You know?
Yeah. You know what? It's so yeah, he didn't know. And
Mhm.
so so that's the kind of thing as well where he you could he didn't know that he had an attachment.
Mhm. What
It was
did he come
only
to you for
he came
originally?
to me because he knew something wasn't right spiritually, but he
Uh,
didn't know what it was.
yeah,
In
yeah.
fact, the main issue was he said, "I'm with other people, but I'm creeping them out."
Ah, wow, that's a problem.
Because
Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like I'm a sweet guy, but sometimes this energy comes through me, and I look at the mirror and I don't really recognize myself.
Hmm.
It's like there's some other creepy energy coming through me, and I don't like it, and I don't know what it is, and other people are sort of responding to it, and I know
Right.
it's not me. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so this is a common thing as well, where, for example, soldiers often have shocking and violent deaths.
Hmm.
And so they're on a battlefield, their
Right.
friend gets blown up next to them in shock. and they just grab onto whatever they can. They have no time to process their death. They're confused. They have a deep fraternal bond to their soldiers. You
Hmm.
have formed such deep connections. So these guys they're really tough soldiers, but they love each other, and they're a
Right.
real band of brothers. And all they want to do is stay together and look after each other.
Hmm.
So there's a great sweetness to these soldiers in a lot of ways. But
Right.
what happens is it kind of backfires on them because as the person dies, they just grab onto the energy of the alive soldier, their best friend, and want to be
Mhm.
with them. When they
Right.
go back home, they're still carrying that energy. And a guy can have PTSD, but he's carrying the anxiety of this person who's in a shock of violent death state. And they sort of
Mhm.
could carry that kind of perpetually. And the alive person who's no longer in battle and could relax
Can't relax.
continues to have
Yeah.
some of that energy around. Yeah. And so
Yeah.
he does have some, PTSD. I'm not saying PTSD is only because of spirits. There's
Hmm.
some pretty good psychological reasons for it as well, but that certainly they can be feeding off whatever anxiety they already have and vibrate with that, and then making it a bit worse. So,
Right.
what's the effect? If you're able to then release them, it may not necessarily be a complete cure, but it's certainly whatever element of it was extra from an entity can drop down.
Right. And then you can work with yourself rather than
Yes.
have nothing to
And so
work with. Yeah.
exactly. And it's all part of a layer. So it's not just saying, oh, it's all spirits, get rid of the spirits and everything's fine. So that's the whole point of the book. You've got to heal yourself in this life.
Hmm.
You want to heal past lives. You want to go into the between lives so you can have a really transcendent understanding, particularly those ones where if it's like, I found out in a past life that my mother was this husband who did these terrible things to me. How can I possibly forgive them? That was so wrong and bad.
Right.
And that's between lives really help you transcend that idea.
And
And
see the
then,
good in it, see the service of it kind of thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
see the ultimate infinite big picture. And so then you get a peace that passes understanding. Because
Mhm.
if it's hard to understand that there's a good in being murdered
Right.
and abused,
Right. Yeah.
so
Yeah. Until
you have
you're
to
seeing it from the higher self and you can see the big picture of it. Yeah.
yeah, that's why law 5 in the book is transcendence.
Hmm.
So we absolutely have duality and a finite body that gets that kicked out of it, but there
Right.
is an infinite body. So our soul suffers and is beaten to pieces.
Hmm.
Uh, but our infinite body, our finite self has that, but our infinite body doesn't in a way. So it's
Yeah.
not that we have to heal our soul, it's that our soul heals us because our soul
Yeah.
never that can't suffer, but it
Yeah.
can bring back that healing energy to the one that feels that it's suffering and bring in a transcendent perspective that brings in an infinite beyond energy into this world,
And
and
with
that
that
which is
release, you can
the
then
therapeutic resolution.
incarnate back. But you said something about a little bit ago. You said where with that woman, we gave you 7 tries. If you blow it, you've got another seven. So that do they come in sevens? Is it like a package deal? You got to go through
Well,
7 lives or of this?
I'm yeah, I prefer not to make blanket statements, and
Uh,
I don't even particularly focus too much on the research of those specifics, or in general. But I would say
mhm,
that's certainly true with this person, and
with that person. Yeah.
I've seen other people say that.
Hmm.
But for another person, that someone else could say, "Oh, you had a batch of 4," that could easily happen. So it's not that in itself, and not necessarily like a law, the law of sevens in that respect, not necessarily. It's just
Right.
that's what that spirit guide council said at that point. And they did say as well, they did actually say, we gave you the karmic opportunity to break that pattern by sending you for these sessions.
Hmm. Oh, yeah,
And
exactly.
and and
We
if you
here's
had
the phone number. Call
exactly,
them.
but she still had to make the call and show up because she'd
Yeah.
actually been to a past life regressionist like for
Hmm.
10 sessions, but she felt she didn't get she had more questions and answers afterwards and didn't get a therapeutic resolution. But she still had the faith to take the next step and to think that there's another step beyond it
Hmm.
and to follow through and do this hard work. She could have easily said halfway through it, "Oh, this is too much, Mark. It's too bad. I'm going to stop and I'll just go and have some lunch. But
Right.
she had the courage and persistence to keep going. And so
Hmm.
that's a karmic action that she took that was a breakthrough. And then when
Right.
we got to the end, the Soul Council celebrated and said, you've done great
Hmm.
and you have broken through that pattern. And actually, one of the things, so she'd been going over this regressionist, some other past lives. And so she knew about this one where she was a gypsy and a dancer and she was beautiful. But in that one, she'd actually sort of been left to, her beauty had created attraction and problems, jealousy, fights. She ended up being beaten and left for dead in the desert. But then, because she had broken through this pattern, we went back and saw that past life, and it was different and better
Hmm.
because of the breakthroughs she made in a present moment.
Yeah.
And so
So she
that's
could see
the
the good out
non.
of that. Yeah.
It's not even necessarily a reframing. It's just that past life was different.
Oh.
And so that's where you break down this thing about past and future. They're all kind of happening simultaneously. When you have a big breakthrough in that moment, it
Hmm.
can affect the past lives as we see and experience them as part of that narrative. And so then that became a way where she could be sensual and beautiful and adored without
Hmm.
it having negative consequences
Yeah. Yeah. So
because
she
she
could.
now had that insight. Yeah,
Mhm.
amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Where's she now?
Yeah.
What's she doing now? Do you know? Have you kept in touch?
I did check actually, yeah. So she actually I did a bit of a forward progression, and she said I see myself as a healer and I'm doing various things and emigrating. And she was working at an international school in Bangalore when I knew her,
Hmm.
and she has now immigrated and is living in a different country and continuing the beautiful adventure of life.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
I don't mean to do a whiplash on you, but I want to bring you back to the spirit release with that guy that
Okay.
you were working with.
Yeah.
When you started to talk to that spirit who was confused,
Yeah.
how did you get that spirit to release, to let go, to move on or whatever you do? How did that
Yeah.
happen?
Yeah, there are a lot of ways that you can do it, but the main one for me is just being curious and interviewing them
Hmm.
and just like figuring out, getting as much information and narrative as you can, and then using that, like getting enough rope and then kind of using it to hang them, but hang them
Okay.
in the way of
But
stop
like
being
that guy with the motorcycle, how did you do it
yeah.
with him?
Yeah. So here's the thing. What a lot of people do is say, you don't have the authority to be here. We command you to leave in the
Right.
name of whoever. Get out of here. Leave
Yeah.
us. You're not wanted. You're not invited. This is not appropriate. And
Go
so that's
away.
actually what a lot of people do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but here's the thing. I don't do any of that,
Hmm.
or not, certainly not to start with. There's a place for that. In fact, if you do that and it works, great.
Right.
But what I typically do is say, "Hey, buddy, I ride motorcycles as well. I did.
Hmm.
So I know, and I feel, Bangalore is pretty rough on the traffic. I feel your pain. Not fun, is it? And so how so I said but I still had to, in order to, like, so all we knew was he was a spirit who was there. And so in order for me to find out that he was a motorcyclist, so first thing is I said, hey, he was, all I knew is he was a guy in darkness, angry, attached to
Hmm.
my client. So I
Right.
said, you're angry, what's going on? He goes, oh, I'm pissed off. And I go, why? And I said, well, uh, I said, did you used to have a human body? And he goes, yes. So
Hmm.
then I know he's an earthbound spirit and not a dark force entity or an ET. So I've got three things that I'm looking for, and now I instantly know it's one out of those three. Now I know what to do next.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
say, you
what are
used
the
to have
other two? What are the other two? What
what? Well, if
if
they
they have
say I
things?
didn't, if they say I didn't have a human body, and if
Yeah.
you, my goodness, uh, then I know it's probably a dark force, and I've got a whole nother technique. And if
Hmm.
they say, we're watching you on our ship and we've got a device, then it's an ET. But uh,
So
but
why
but as
would
an Earth,
a dark force? Okay. Yeah. No. Go on, because I'm going
yeah,
to whiplash you all over the place.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
So
no. Go
yeah,
ahead on. You say you ask him
so
first if he had a
so
human
so
body, and
now
he said yes.
exactly. So now I know he's an earthbound spirit, and I say, well, when did you leave this human body?
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, oh, 2 months ago. I say,
Mm-hmm.
well, whereabouts? What happened? And he said, I was driving along and some idiot cut me off, and then I chased him, and then I was dead. And I said, well, okay. And then what happened? He goes, I was looking down on my body, and I was so pissed off, and my bike was new, now it's wrecked, and this idiot, it's his fault, and he's only got a scratch. I'm just so pissed off. And I
Yeah.
said, well, then what happened? And he goes, I was like, well, how'd you get connected to my client? And he said, I was just floating back, and I just felt someone else who had just exactly the same energy as me. And it's like, if you're really angry and you want to sort of go, oh, can you believe what this guy did? You want to talk to your friend and just sort of like rant on about who is this person and blame them and just get stuck in that energy. And so I felt he was like that. And so I just sort of stuck to him. And I said, well, as you were looking over the body, did you look up or around? And he goes, what? I said, no. So it's like, what, you just stuck to this guy and then got into a rant about how angry you were? And he goes, yeah. I said, well, how long has that been going on for? And he's like, well, what do you mean? I don't know. I said, well, it's like been 2 months already. He was like, what? 2 months? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So you're unhappy in a moment. I said, what was your life like before that? I was really good. That's why I was so pissed off. I had this beautiful new bike. Things are going well. I'm like, and things are not going well now. You've been stuck in this state of being really angry for the last 2 months. He's like,
Mm-hmm.
is it that long? I'm like, yeah. And I said, I mean, how is it being this angry? He's like, I don't really like it. I said,
Mm-hmm.
well, how long do you plan on being this angry? It's like, well, what? You mean there's a way out? I said, yeah. He goes, well, what's that? What do we want? And so you establish a willingness. If it's a dark force entity, they'll probably push against you and not necessarily want to get out.
Mm-hmm.
But with this earthbound spirit, he's like, he's still got an energy of anger, but he's calmed down enough and he's rational enough to know that
Right.
he doesn't really want this. And so I
Yeah.
said, well, look, what if we replay it? And so you can go back and so see yourself, having the energy of, having the crash, looking down on the body, then looking along to the other cars. What happens if you, instead of going to my guy, what happens if you just turn around and look upwards? What do you see
Mm-hmm.
then? And he's like, ah, it's a light. It's really beautiful. I said, well, what happened if you were to move towards that light? And he's like, oh my God, I feel
Mm-hmm.
like much better. And I go, what happened to the anger? It's like, it's just getting less and less. I was like, well, what do you think about that? And he goes, oh, it's good. I said, well, is it better than being angry like this for 2 months? He's like, yeah, miles better. So I said, all
Yeah.
right, well, what do you want? What else do you want to do? Do you want to get closer into it? And he goes, shut up. I'm closer to it already. And
Yeah.
and my loved ones are there. I'm like, oh, what do they say? And what do you, they say, it's okay. And they say, oh, can you believe that SOB? They're like, no, no. And he just laughed like, no, they're
Mm-hmm.
over it. It's like, whatever, it's happened. And they bring me into the light. And so, and then we can say, is there anything, you've been attached to my guy for a couple of months. Anything you want to say to him? He goes, oh, sorry about that. And, you know, uh, and anyway, I got to go. Bye. And
Mm.
so, like, at no point did I tell him what to do.
Right.
I didn't say,
Right.
you're wrong. Don't be angry. How can you be such an angry guy? You suck. You're doing it
Yeah.
wrong. I just said, hey, look, just what happened if you look over there?
Mm-hmm.
And so, just
Get
whatever,
him to
just tune
want.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah, tune into
Yeah.
another reality. There's a loving reality around you if you can look at it. And is that better than being an angry SOB? Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
You make your choice. Just point them in the right direction and they figure out the rest.
And
Yeah.
how was your patient? How was your client after
Oh,
when he was leaving? How did he feel?
well, I think during it, I mean, he's hearing and seeing a lot of this at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe at that time he was like he never knew what the holdup was.
Right.
And so then he I think he went and did some research and found out that there was a motorcycle accident.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was like, and so then he was like, oh, that's why that thing was there. And
Mm-hmm.
so he didn't know that, but the spirit told him. Then he realized, and so that's just, was I making it up? And
Yeah.
then he could go and
Yeah.
do the research and find out that's why there was a traffic accident at that
Right.
time,
Right.
and this was the guy.
So
Yeah.
he felt lighter, released.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, well, there is more to the story, and that's why I get into complex, because that was the first top layer. And
Uh-huh.
so once we got rid of that guy, we found another layer of a dark force entity, and
Okay.
that was attached in this life 2 months ago. But we found a dark force entity that had been attached, and another entity that had been attached 500 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And then we had to do a whole nother thing with that, which is
Yeah.
another
Well,
session.
what do you do
Yeah.
on the dark force? And why do they attach?
Yeah. Well, they are another process, and they think that they're dark. They
Hmm.
act as if they're dark. They have dark effects on our people,
Right.
but this is where you have to have a transcendent perspective to them. And so the basic process is a similar interviewing of them.
Hmm.
What are you doing here? Where did you come from? Why are you attaching? Why are you doing this? And with the Earthbound, it was because he was angry, and it was just his he
It
was
was
complete. It was
and
his.
in the moment almost. Yeah.
Yeah. But dark forces feel that they're being driven by an external entity that is telling them you've got to go do this, like a
Mm.
dark master or a dark lord.
Right.
And they sort of feel that they're kind of being pushed into doing something, and often being tricked and deceived and
Hmm.
lied to and threatened and abused. And then they take that energy and then try and trick, deceive, lie, and abuse to our clients. And the ultimate way to cut through it is that they in at one level of reality that can really affect people's lives and is a serious thing. But at
Hmm.
another level, ultimately, you can turn them, just as we turn the earthbound to the light
Hmm.
as he gets reborn. There's a universal light that dark force energies, once you address it, because they've been lied to, they say if you see the light, it'll hurt you. If you
Yeah.
go towards it, it'll destroy you.
Yeah.
And you gently have to debug a lot of the deception that they've been told. You bit by bit move them towards the light, and they realize it doesn't hurt or harm them. Getting closer to it doesn't destroy them, and
Yeah.
that at their core, they think they're just a worthless nothing who can only ever feed off the misery of others and are
Hmm.
miserable while doing that. But then they look inside themselves and see there's a tiny little spark of light within them, and they're not the ultimately evil thing or bad thing that they think they are, that they have a little bit of light within them, and you just zoom into that and magnify it, and then they're able to be free of the one that would seem to be controlling them, because the only power that any evil has is the power that we give it, and beyond
Hmm.
that, it doesn't have ultimate power.
How did
Yeah,
that dark energy get hold of them? What happened that
yeah,
they believed the lies, or even, what happened that they ended up in that spot? We're going a little deep,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of ways into it, and so ultimately, like there are things that people do in past lives, like some occult practices.
Hmm.
Some people sort of intentionally a little bit seduced by the dark,
Right.
and want to get power from the dark,
Hmm.
and which doesn't end well. Or it's a whole journey before you eventually, get back to the light. Or some people are naive
Hmm.
and are easily trickable.
Yeah.
And so then we sort of come, and part of the solution or when some people are just overcome by emotions like grief, or just not accepting reality. Like
Hmm.
somebody dies and they can't accept it, and they want the power to, and so it's accepting reality, fundamental truths that human
Yeah.
life is finite. We're born, we get sick, we age, and we die. And if
Hmm.
you want to fight against that kind of reality and not accept it, well then, it's a path to darkness.
Right. Right.
And people are also tricked. Like people get scammed out of their money,
Hmm.
and parasitic things can take us in a non-spiritual dimension. And some
Hmm.
people don't get tricked by that. Some people do, or fall into it, or for whatever karmic reason. Or some people are just particularly good, and you're just at a low point, and anyone can get had.
Right.
So, but
Right.
in the end, like, why does it happen? I think ultimately, and the question is that really a bad thing? And ultimately, not necessarily. Just like, is it bad to be, abused, shot, killed?
Hmm.
Well, I mean, yes, probably at a finite level. But if that's the kick that you needed to investigate the spiritual and not get stuck to in the material, then it serves a purpose.
Right.
And if you do have these kind of dark attachments and you have to go through a journey where you see a therapist who helps you heal it, well, then, you've quite a lot of understanding at a deep
Mhm.
level and, all for the good in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Now I'm going to ask about the ET part.
Uh-oh.
When you see
It,
the ET, how do you release that? Or do you
yeah, I
not?
mean,
Can you not? Can you do it?
yeah. Well, ETs are probably one of them. All karmic connections imply to me that we've got individual karmic connections to a
Hmm.
degree. So everything's pretty subjective. So when I talk about ETs, I'm talking about a very specific thing that I see in therapy
Hmm.
and that I then treat therapeutically. And there's a lot of other stuff about ETs that people talk about, but I don't see it in sessions. My clients don't bring it. I
Hmm.
know sometimes people they do bring it to other therapists, but not me because I don't have the connection to it. So sometimes people do talk about alien abductions and
Hmm.
do regression to figure out what happened. I've seen that a little bit, but not much, and I know other people that do it more.
Right.
Other people will get into channeling of ETs and have a really good experience with it.
Hmm.
And then it's kind of not my business because as a therapist, I'm looking for people that are having problems, not having a good time
Right.
completely,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So they're
so I'm
good.
kind
So they
so
don't really come to a therapist. They're happy.
exactly. Exactly. So if I start saying things about ETs, like ETs can cause a problem, and they go, no, they don't, because I'm all good. Well,
Yeah.
then that's cool. But that's your subjective perspective, and I'm not invalidating that. And I'm just saying I'm super biased by only
Mm.
ever seeing people who do anything like that and have a problem. And so what I see is sometimes maybe people channel ETs and they're not exactly sure who they're channeling
Right.
and it goes great for a while, but then they start to think maybe this isn't quite as good as I thought it was,
Hmm.
and maybe I'm not getting some negative consequences in my life, and I sort of want to turn it off, and now I can't. Or,
Hmm.
or, or as you scan through, you can find it, and so that's one possibility. But even then, they tend not to attach as beings. What
Hmm.
I see, and they may do. Look, there's many other things that could happen that I don't get exposed to and don't know about. But the main thing that I see and know about is if there's an ET attachment, it's likely to be a device. So I see ETs just go through the full range of anything. Some ETs can be good, some can be neutral, some can be bad, and that just means for the physical and mental uh, health of the person in that moment. Even if it's bad in the short term, it may be good in the long term that they've learned something. So what I tend to see is they scan through the energy like we do that X-ray, and that instead of saying, "Oh, there's a voice there that's saying I was in a crash," they say there's a device there. It looks like some eye of Auron, some all-seeing eye. It's gathering information and sending that back to the ship,
Hmm.
and they sort of psychically know that. And then I'll get in contact with I'll say, "Can we, through this device that's here, communicate back to the ship?" And then they'll say yes. And so you feel funny, but patch me into the ship.
Right.
Scotty, what do you send this device here for?
Right.
And but it is literally like that. And then funnily enough, the ETs they tend that they'll say, yes, that's our device. We're running an experiment. What's your point? And I'll say, well, what? Then I'll just keep asking, like, what's the experiment for?
Hmm.
And they say this and that. I say, well, how long has it been running? They're like, oh, 30 years. I'm like, well, and what this particular one was an egg. It was like an egg. Well,
Yeah.
one of these examples. One of them was the iron, and another one was an egg. So I said, an egg is supposed to be planted and it's supposed to hatch at some point. How long is this one going to sit there? And they go, actually, you make a good point.
Mm-hmm.
It should have done something by now. Well, then in that case, the experiment's over. And they go, well, no, we want to keep running the experiment. Well, you got the result of the experiment. Now you can just take out the device. And
Hmm.
they go, I don't know about that. And I say, well, who does? Patch me into your supervisor.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then And then the manager says that's actually true, and they'll start saying stuff like the law of human sovereignty. Even if she had agreed to have it at some point, she doesn't agree to have it now. Whatever reasons you had, we hear that, we understand that, but we also think, isn't it reasonable that you can stop it? And they'll go, actually, you make a good point. So we do agree to stop it, and we'll take it out. And then
Hmm.
I'll do another little thing, which is, by the way, if you've got this implant in this one person, how many other people have you got in this planet, these implants in? And they go, oh, 200. I said, well, and for the same thing, like you put them all 20 years ago, you put in 200 people, they go, yes. Well, can you just check and see if any of those are actually working? And they go, no. So you've got the results of that experiment. Can you just take it out of all those other ones as well? And they go, oh, yes, of course. We'll go ahead and do that now.
Hmm.
And
Wow.
so, and this is all just
And
happening sort of, yeah.
what does an ET do to the person? Like once it's out, how do they change or what happens?
Yeah, so this person particularly, she felt a lot of emotional blockages,
Hmm.
literal health blockages in her lower intestine. She had even gynecological issues, all these, and because this egg, in fact, part of
Hmm.
it was they were wanting to create a hybrid human,
Hmm.
and they through her energy, they didn't want her to be in relationships, they didn't want her to have children, and they wanted her to focus on doing these things for their experiment. So they're blocking a lot of things in her life, blocking her flow of money, blocking relationships, blocking her physically, and she had a lot of excess health conditions you wouldn't expect for someone in their 30s. And as it came out, a lot of those things alleviated.
Dissipated. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. This is all absolutely fascinating. I know I've kept John
Mm.
longer than we figured.
Okay.
But I'll have to bring it to a close and let you go. Although it's like I want more.
Okay.
But your book, where
Mm.
you have seven spiritual laws, really in your book,
Yeah.
and we're
Yeah.
not going to go through those. Is your book published now? Is it out?
It's out, I think May 26th in the UK and June 1st in the US, but it's
Okay.
available for pre-order now.
Oh,
So
good.
yeah, by the time this comes out, I guess should be. But you go to Amazon
Mhm.
and should be there. Or my website is Past Life Awakening Institute. I've got a little page of books, so you can get it in hard copy from places, in the stores around the world. Yeah,
Right, right.
should be.
And they can get hold of you and work with you directly.
Yeah,
So you
yeah.
work
So
with
I
people
do.
directly. Yeah.
Yep, still do one-to-one sessions on Zoom for past lives, between lives, spirit release hypnotherapy, and that's half of what I do, and the other half is mentoring advanced students. So that's
Hmm.
often people who've even probably trained or have a good background in alternative therapies or conventional therapies. Half of my students are psychologists, doctors,
Hmm.
social workers, licensed social workers, people trained in that conventional sense, licensed therapists already, and want to
Right.
start doing spiritual therapies, or other people are people involved in some sort of spiritual therapy. So the advanced people pretty much need to bring a little bit of a client book already of people that they
Hmm.
work with. And like I work with them doing this kind of work, and now I want to start offering them this extra session. But if they're not at that stage yet, they can go to my website and get courses where they can learn more about it and start to practice it and build up a book. And then I do the advanced mentoring once they're really decide
Once
they
are
really
up
want to
to
be
par
serious and
kind of thing.
professional.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, great. And your website again, one more time?
Pastlifeawakeninginstitute.com.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I got it.
And
I
the
got to,
name of
yeah,
your
got to
book. And the name of your book.
past life. Yeah. Past Life Awakening, 7 regression case studies, illustrate 7 spiritual laws.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you
Mark
so
Beale.
much for being on and sharing all this with us. I've
Sure.
really enjoyed it and appreciated it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been great to be here.
Thanks. Bye bye.